All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session from PIM vendors together with Signifikant PIM. I'm Stefan Spijkers. I am co-founder of PIMvendors.com, and with PIMvendors.com, we provide independent product data consulting. So if you have any product data challenges, be that in your product data process or with your product data architecture, so your tooling, or maybe with your product data experts, so your product data governance and the different people involved in that process, we are here to help you without being tied to one specific solution or a set of specific solutions. So we are able to offer your solution agnostic advice that fits your organization and create a process and a tooling architecture that really helps you not just with your current challenges, but maybe even help you with your ambitions and enabling your ambitions over the coming years. If you want more information on that, you can always find me here on LinkedIn. I'm pretty confident that you know how to reach me, or my colleague Chris Jopse, also here in the chat. Or you can find us on www.pimvendors.com, where you can also find our free shortlist tool. If you want a tailored and independent PIM shortlist, 5 solutions that would fit you best, head on over to pimvendors.com and you will get a free PIM shortlist there. But you're not here for free PIM shortlists. You are here for Signifikant and realizing how you can optimize your aftermarket service delivery with a PIM tool. I'm very curious how that is going to work and the benefits that product data and a golden record and relationships can bring. We're going to learn that in the coming, 55 minutes. If you have any questions, please drop them here in the chat on the right-hand side. And you can ask questions to both Ruud and Matthias directly. I'll try to weave those into the conversation. If not, I will definitely reach out to you after the event to check in on your questions. If you have to leave early or when you're joining late, no worries. We'll also be sharing a recording with everyone that attended the event. So with that all behind us, I would say, Matthias, could you maybe take over and do a quick introduction of yourself and take it away?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this event and letting us having this opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Matthias Löfstrand and one of the founders of the company Signifikant and also the CEO of the company. And I've been working with spare part solutions and tools and PIMs and structures for the aftermarket for the manufacturing industry for about 20 years. And with me today, I have my colleague Ruud de Breukere. Please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Ruud de Breukere. I've been working at Signifikant also for 20 years now, in software for 30 years, originally from the Netherlands, but also already have been living 30 years in Sweden. So I hope to combine the good sides of both. And yes, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ruud. I will begin the presentation. The theme of the day is optimizing the aftermarket service delivery with PIM, or as we usually say, aftermarket PIM on our side. And first, a few quick words on the company Signifikant. We've been around about 20 years. We were founded 2004, so it's a little bit more than 20 years. We have the head office in Stockholm, Sweden, and we also have subsidiaries in France and in India and have customers on most continents. Our solutions are targeted towards the manufacturing industry and the industry that serves their users with spare parts and also distributors of such. And our main mission is to help our customers to improve the profitability within the aftermarket by making the aftermarket service delivery more digital. We offer solutions within this. It's an aftermarket PIM, which is the main core of our solution. It's a catalog solution to browse information on the web and the corresponding e-commerce platform to make sure that you can both find the information and order parts if that is the wish for an end user. And the way we deliver this is, of course, through the platform itself, but we also do consultancy to make sure that the solution gets up and running and get optimized and can solve the needs of the manufacturer. So we do implementation, development, deployment, customizations, and of course, support. So a little bit on the aftermarket itself and its evolution over time. And initially, the focus was basically to sell spare parts as a service delivery to make sure that products are up and running. Quite some time ago, of course, that was something which was highly manual. You called someone, you get information about the spare parts, or you have a printed book where you can find the parts for your particular product. But that was quite some time ago, and the market has evolved, and quite soon it became an interactive catalog where you online can browse and find your exact spare parts. But we all know that typically manufacturing industry has a fairly big set of complexity in terms of options, configurations, individually created products, and things that make whatever you have in front of yourself unique, possibly because they have been rebuilt. And that has created the concept of digital twins. And normally that could be related to getting live data on products, how products are used. But it's also about describing the exact structures and parts of a product which is produced, possibly as maintained. And the last part, of course, is to be able to purchase whatever you need to get online. And that could be a way to service a dealer network with having spare parts on local stock. It could be the workshops needing to order or back order parts to have them locally, or it could be end customers that need to order something also, depending on how the distribution chain and the business looks like for each vendor or market manufacturer, basically. But there are a few things that are quite common to the aftermarket. The first one, of course, is the service level in itself. It's really about finding the right parts to the right machine and make sure that you can reduce wrong deliveries and improve the warranty and recovery processes, possibly of parts also, if that is needed. So basically keep the basic processes smooth. But it goes back to the foundation of data quality, knowing exactly which part goes into which machine. And of course, if possible, make sure that these processes to make the information of high quality automated. And they are usually, at least when it comes to cross-border, certain verticals, also important to keep compliance information on spare parts and service levels. Then, depending on the business vertical, there is always quite often a need of increasing the aftermarket. So while some manufacturers do not face a very big competition within the aftermarket because you're alone, maybe nobody else can service your products, others do face quite severe competition in getting a spare part for, let's say, a farming equipment or similar. So quite common, we come across customers that have a distinct focus on trying to increase the aftermarket share, still keeping the prices of the OEM a bit higher compared to the competitors providing gray market parts. And the last 5-10 years, there has also been quite clear move away from just selling spare parts to some kind of increased service offering, or possibly extended service contracts, charging for uptime, performance-based contracts, and things like that are getting more and more important, and also is a way to improve the profitability of the aftermarket, and for that matter, beat the competition when it comes to third-party sales. So, a PIM. I think quite many of you are quite well aware of a PIM is. It's a way to package and keep all the information about products in one single place. Attributes, images, and relations of various kinds. And typically the information do not get created in the PIM. It could get enriched in the PIM, but they typically come from somewhere else, like the ERP system, from master data system, from documentation system, possibly PLM systems, and so on. What we try to do is to narrow down this more general PIM approach to something which is an aftermarket PIM. And looking at the aftermarket, there are a few needs that are quite special to the aftermarket. And that could be a drill down structure of the product, because you're not going to look at the complete product. You're instead going to look at something on one specific machine. It could be supersessions and replacements and things that are unique to the aftermarket, where one product maybe is not sold anymore because it's 20 years old, but you can get something else which will solve the need of the aftermarket. So what we consider is an aftermarket PIM is something which is both wider and more narrow as compared to a regular PIM. We need to handle these specialities, but we also do not really need to try to upsell the same way as you do in a traditional PIM. So there are a few core concepts in a PIM, in an aftermarket PIM, sorry about that. And the main object is, of course, a spare part. And that's really what your customers would like to find at the end, the spare part that fits your particular need. But it could also be something which is on a higher level. It could be a component, which could be a complete engine, or a gearbox, or something like that, which actually consists of several other spare parts and could possibly also contain of components, which has components which have subcomponents in itself. And then you get the spare parts. So we're talking about a product which has drilled down structures before you come to the actual part. Quite common also in the aftermarket is the kitting concept, where you do not sell a single bolt or O-ring. Rather, you would sell a multi-pack of O-rings or a service pack, let's say a 1,000-mile service kit for an engine, or similar like that, where you pack several spare parts into one single kit. And all this needs to be handled in an aftermarket PIM. Of course, like for any other PIM, there will be accompanying documents and images and things like that that may assist in the need in the aftermarket. It could be a service instruction, it could be a step-by-step procedure, it could be a protocol that tells you that I did this particular service, you can prove it. So when we look at the attributes of individual parts, it will be, as for any PIM, numbers and names and images and permissions and things like that. And it will most likely be a fairly large set of key value pairs that help you in the business, like cross-border platform CTN codes for customs and things like that. But the add-on information is really interesting, because here we come to what's unique within the aftermarket, and that's replacements. So maybe you have a product which was sold 30 years ago, and some of the components in this product have parts which are no longer produced by the same vendor, so you have a replacement or succession. And that could be a long chain where part A has been replaced by part B, which is replaced by part C, and so on. And this needs to be handled in the aftermarket PIM. Looking at used in, that's also something which is quite common in aftermarket PIM. That is, how do I know that this particular part will fit my product or the product that I'm about to service? And also ask the question, will it fit any other products? Part options, similar thing. If you have an old product and a doorknob goes off, and it's a 15, 20-year-old product, maybe you can't have it in white anymore, but maybe there's a gray one which will do the job. And for some customers, if the product breaks down, that would be a perfectly valid choice, yes, to keep it going for another year or two. So this is also a bit typical for an aftermarket PIM. Then, of course, it will be permissions-based information. So maybe a service technician will get a bit more information than an end customer. So as a comparison between a standard PIM or a normal PIM and an aftermarket PIM, some of the key features that makes it a bit different here is the drill down structures, to be able to drill down from a top level product into a specific part. It's definitely technical illustrations where you maybe have an exploded view. It could be a flat, old style, black and white exploded view, or a nice 3D image where you may turn and look at the product from different angles and find your particular part. So there will be some kind of hotspot connecting the illustration with a specific spare part. It's the digital twin concept or exact versions. So selling a product doesn't necessarily mean it's produced in one specific way, because a product maybe has a small design change from one day to another or from one unit to another, which is crucial from a spare part perspective. You replace it with another part and it really has to fit. Even though it's the same model, it's even the same kind of product, it's still a difference which is crucial when it comes to repairing it. So that's quite important in the aftermarket PIM. Often also, there will be a need of offline support. Of course, it depends on the business you have, but quite commonly you may have products that are placed in locations where internet is limited. So then it's important to be able to access the information on also remote areas. Replacements, supersessions, and options we talked about, quite critical in the aftermarket. And kits and how kits fit into specific versions is also something that must be handled in the aftermarket. So personalization, that's something that is quite important when it comes to e-commerce. It's also in the aftermarket when it's about aftermarket e-commerce, and it goes back to the PIM itself. But in the aftermarket, it's not so interesting to try to guess what the customer wants to do, because most commonly they know exactly which product they will be servicing. So you have a product in front of yourself, and you're not so interested in knowing what other people looked at when you're looking at one specific product. So the structure will be crucial. It's also important to make sure that you have perfect record of possible design changes. Otherwise, you may end up with a spare part which does not fit, even though it's the same model. We also know that when you're browsing for spare parts, you're not really doing impulse purchase. So doing cross sales and upsells, trying to get people to buy more stuff, it's not so interesting because you want to solve a problem. You want to reduce the stop time and maximize the uptime. So it comes back to the install base to make sure that you know the exact versions of the products and possibly even the install base itself, depending on your situation. So when we go all the way to do recommendations of getting additional parts or kits or things like that, and the personalization side of it to do the upsells, it's not about getting information from other users. It's rather, what more do I need to do? And maybe I want to need to buy something more to do the job. Maybe this little knob needs a special tool to be fitted. Or maybe as a manufacturer, we know that if this particular thing has broken, it's quite likely also need to service something different. That kind of information is really, really important in the aftermarket and also very helpful in making the service technicians or the service staff or the user getting the product to work again if it has broken down. So what is required for this personalization in the aftermarket? Of course, the front end, to be able to find and sell the parts and make sure that the service technicians or end users find the information. And at that point in time, it's going to be a web shop where we can do the cross upselling, but only in the way I just talked about. But it always goes back to the backend data and the quality of the data, because the most important thing is make sure that the person doing the job gets the right spare part to do the job that fits into the particular machine you have in front of you. So product individuals and customers and possibly install base and the supporting processes for this are really, really crucial. So we're going to switch over now and have a quick look on how it may look like for a few selected customers. So I will hand over to my colleague Rud. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Matthias. And I will indeed switch the screen. So Matthias ended with telling that the backend is maybe the most important, as is for PIM systems, but the front end is also important. It should be very simple and easy to find what you're looking for. And our customers typically are OEMs. They make machines, they make heavy machines or complex machines, and they need to be maintained on a very long time. Our customers are typically not looking for a product. They typically already have a product and the product is broken down. So what they do is they want to have a spare part or something repaired. So the first thing is they will maybe go to Google and search for their product. They will maybe search for a spare part number. And the most important thing here is that the OEM site comes on the top, that they don't go to a Chinese site or anything else and find this spare part. They need to be on top and they need to have this trust that if I order it from this site, if I order it from the OEM specifically, it will always be the correct spare part because they have all the data, they have the backend. So first of all, make sure you come on top. And then typically our solutions work B2B. So it's resellers, it's dealers, it's service technicians that log in. But we also have possibility to have users register themselves. And so end users who also can look into the system and find spare parts and maybe contact their dealer to order the spare parts. I will log in into the system, and yeah, the main thing is of the front end to be as simple as possible, as quickly as possible. Find your product, find the section where your product fails, and find the spare part that you want to order. So one way of doing that is showing like a typical web shop, showing categories. I have a Series B machine, and I have a front loader 8. And when I go to the front loader 8 page, I can see that we have different types of information about this front loader 8. We have a spare parts catalog, we sell wear parts, we sell tools, and on the bottom here we see also a specification, we see a lot of information. And that's typically what we do at the backend. We take information from many different systems, from the engineering PLM tool, from the manufacturing, from the suppliers, from the CAT, the drawers, but also from, for instance, a PIM system. We very often work together with a PIM system that gives us information about the products, but we enhance that with our aftermarket PIM system. So, okay, we have come down here, and this was one way of finding our product. We have a search bar here also. Typically, also you can search by typing a product number, PNC number, a serial number, and you will find the tool or the product you're looking for also. And that's what we want. And then if you click on it, you want to be 100% sure that this is the correct product and the correct section of that product. And also for my serial number or for the factory where my machine has been created. So we will see later on that we also can search for our product by serial number or by the products that I have in the OEM CRM system, so that we are even more sure that we have the correct product. But now we have zoomed in, we have gone down into the product, and we have seen the section where we have a problem. And specifically, it's this support lag here with number 2. So if I click on it, it opens the information, and there's a lot of information there. It's of course the name. Typically, it could be coming from the supplier database or the ERP system. It has a part number, so we can order it. But also here at the bottom, you see that this part number 292408911 is actually the end of a replacement chain. If the person will look into their machine, which they may have bought for 20 years ago, they will see one of the part numbers here at the bottom. So that is what distinguishes typically an aftermarket PIM from a normal PIM. We have these kind of replacement chains. And if we order it, if we add this to our order, what will also happen is that it will send the whole replacement chain to the ERP system, to the warehousing system, because maybe they still have one of these old parts and they may still be good and they may still want to sell that. So we see that it is replaced, we get the net price, we get the gross price, we see the numbers in stock. So also in the front end, we are integrating with many different systems. We can move on and look at another part, the loader beam. I think Matthias told also we have this idea of interchangeable parts. Maybe I have a green tractor, I have a green front loader, but it's August, I need to harvest and my machine is broken. So the green one is not there, so we know that there is also a yellow one that works exactly the same, which will also work with my serial number, my exact machine that I have, because that is important. Data quality is really what we are about, because these are machines that are already out there and they will only work with spare parts that are actually correct. If we look into, we click on another number here, number 9, it's a screw. This is another thing that distinguishes the aftermarket PIM system from a normal PIM system, and that is that we also know, we intelligently know that, okay, this screw, well, it's just a simple screw, but it could be a little bit more complex, a spare part. It knows that, okay, it's also used in this service kit that you should use after 2000 hours of usage. It's also included in this multi-pack. It's also included in this replacement kit. So do you really want to only buy this screw, or do you want to buy one of these kits? And it will find these relationships automatically. And when I add it to the order, I can choose between these. I can also click on them and see what they contain. So if I add it to the order, so we do have the backend, the PIM system with all the information that is needed and all the numbers to be able to order it in the ERP system. But also the front end also integrates very well with your e-commerce system or your ERP system. You can bring this order, so it's a one-stop system, a stop shop system. You can find a part, you can put it in your shopping basket, and you can order it. You can even pay it. We have integrations also with payment system. Then maybe there are other problems. You have your product, but there is an issue. You just received it 1 month ago, and then something breaks, and you say, well, that shouldn't break after 1 month. So then you need a claim system. And again, the information we have in our PIM system is so much valuable information to create a claim. It knows about the products, it knows about the articles, the spare parts and the parts in the products. We know who has the product. So we have a claim module which very well makes it easy to create claims on the product and help the user to actually create a claim so that they don't need to, there's no way they can, for instance, add a wrong part number for a product that doesn't include that part number. So the customer can go in and look at their claims and see their statuses. We can have different workflows here, but when they create the claim, then typically we have our PIM at the back end. We do know the product numbers. We do know what product. We do know which parts are in there. So we can just list them and you can check, okay, these are the parts which typically very often break. So we can already have a list there of parts which are very often used in claims. And of course, that information we can also use then later to make sure that maybe that part doesn't break so often anymore. But that's another question. So all the information we gather can be used later also, of course, with some kind of AI, for instance, to draw smart conclusions. So that's about the claims. I will continue. We don't have so much time. If I click here on my specific menu, I can also see that I have here something called My Products. And that's actually the best way to find your product and to find what's wrong and to find the spare part, because then you really know for 100% sure this is my specific machine. It's created on a specific date, the 1st of July. I don't need to write a serial number. It's already in the system. I know for 100% sure that this is the one. I can register another product that I've bought, but I can also click on this one and see all the information. I see the information from manufacturing, from engineering. I can see information from the service stations, from the workshops, what they have done. They've taken something out, put something in. And here down, you can also see that this is actually part of an installation. This is a farm, a big farm, and they have multiple front loaders. In this case, it's more like a collection. But if we look at our customer Atlas Copco Industrial Tools, they, for instance, create screwdrivers for manufacturing companies in the automotive industry. And then they have an installation, they have a production line, and they have screwdrivers that belong together. So we can create these kind of installations and know that they belong together, and they're using, for instance, the same control system. So that was the front end. We also take a very
Maybe a quick question, Ruud.
yeah.
Who's the owner of the data? So we have a question from the audience. So is the supplier owning the data or the dealer?
It's basically almost always the OEM, so the creator and the seller of the machine, the creator of the machine has the data. We also have some customers who are dealers or distributors who put in the data, but typically the data, it's not owned by us, definitely not. It's by the OEM, but they of course can also aggregate data from other sources. So it might be data that they have received from other places.
Yeah. And then another question also related to the web shop view you just shared. So you said it was possible to integrate Signifikant into your existing web shop or use the order portal I think you just showed. How does that work? And maybe what do you see in practice? Are people using more your own internal portal, or are they using their own web shop, or are they using both, maybe in parallel?
That's actually very mixed, yes. And that is also our approach. All our customers use the same base platform, the same base front end and the same base backend. But some already have a web shop. Some, of course, already have an ERP, some don't. So we provide a solution for the very small OEMs who not even have an ERP, maybe not a PLM system, where we take care of the product information, we take care of the user and customer information, we take care of the web shop and of the orders, and we make sure they are fulfilled. All the way up to a customer which already has a web shop, we're only interested in to get the data through an API or through files, which already has a user database, which already has a CRM system where all the information is about which customer has bought which machine. And what we then do is integrate and bring everything together. So the end result will look and feel the same. It will all be integrated, but sometimes we use our modules or parts, and sometimes we use the ones that the customer already have. And we also have a customer who in EMEA, in Europe, uses our web shop, our front end. But in the US, they have another web shop and they actually just query our system through APIs and get the information from the PIM system directly. Yeah, everything is possible. Then I thought we can have a quick look at the backend. And here we have what we call our web manager. And here you can manage and search and import and validate and do everything with the data that you like. You can also create your own business model. So if I would search for a number that I know is what this customer calls a PNC number. And that's also a difference between a typical PIM system where you typically think in SKUs, the things you sell. We think in product numbers, in things that have been manufactured. So one SKU can relate to 10 up to 50 different PNC numbers, where there is a small changes in how the product has been manufactured, but they are sold under the same name and under the same model number. So if you search for that, you also can see, well, indeed, it found a product. And we found some information here, and we can choose the columns and sort on it. It also finds that there were sections that matched this search. There are documents, there could be parts. So if I click here on these dots, I can see that each and every of our customers have their own business model. with where they say, well, we have these information types, with these presentation types. In this case, it's product section. Section contains of parts and illustrations. They have documentation, and so on and so on. They have videos, and this set of information is different for each and every customer. We can look into such object, and we can then see that there's a lot of information about this product. There we have a lot of fields, and these are fields from many different sources. As I already said, it's the sales, it's the engineering, it's the manufacturing, it's the suppliers, it's manual people in the factory. All this information comes in and can be managed here. Typically, it's managed through APIs and through import files, but it can be managed manually here also. And if I click on catalog, I can see that there was a spare parts catalog. There are documents. In the same way, I can search for a part number, and what I will find is an exact part at the turning knob, selector, switch. And again, if I go into it, we will have a different set of, it says unclassified here. You can actually create nice categories for all your fields. They didn't do that here, but you can find, and there's a different set of information for each different information type. And also I can find here which turning knobs are interchangeable with this one, so that I could just as well buy that one. And here there are actually quite a lot that are interchangeable. Yeah, to finish it off, just quickly look at, okay, I talked about this business model. We have these presentation types, the product, illustration, section, document, part, which we can then define what fields you want. And for each field, well, that's the next one, the specification types. Here we have the different fields. What are their specific? I think you've been working with PIM systems, you know how this works. If it's mandatory, if it's multiple values it can have, or just single values. We have reference tables, so you can look for the custom tariff codes in EMEA, and then we have the reference tables, and whenever you need to fill in something like that, or you need to validate something like that, then you can see, then you can match it against these reference tables. So it's all web-based, and yeah, it also meant to be simple, but not as simple as the front end, which should be extremely simple, even though all the data behind is extremely complex. Any questions at this point, Stefan?
Yes, multiple.
Okay.
So I have some questions, but the audience goes first. So there's still more in the generic part. And if the audience has questions, please drop them in the comments and we'll discuss them during this conversation. But I have three great questions from someone here on Riverside. Regarding, one question is, in the PIM aftermarket PIM comparison, many aspects are mentioned that PIM customers include in their PIM model. So exploded view, spare parts, kit, sibling part info. The reason is often to have one source system to avoid creating new data silos or missing product and part relations. How do you guys see that? I'll type the question also in the internal chat so you can.
Shall I go on that one?
Yes.
Here it's written also. Yeah, this is a good question. Again, it varies a bit from customer to customer, but quite often, from an aftermarket perspective, you're interested in aggregated information from quite many different sources. So the information on the aftermarket PIM, which also goes to the end customer, comes from typically a PLM system. Depending on how the OEM looks like, it could be from many different PLMs. If you have factories around the world which actually do the design themselves, it's going to be aggregated from all those factories into one database. It could also come from a master data system where you have additional information, maybe a PIM system for images of parts. So typically, it's actually quite many silos, possibly even organizations that provide information. And from an aftermarket perspective, it needs to be aggregated. And this aggregation process is quite important because you don't want a spare part to be named one thing in the service manual, another thing in the catalog, a third thing on the invoice. Rather, you want to make sure that everything is aligned. Some of the customers are actually quite good at that. They already have it all well aligned in one single PLM system, but they just don't have a way to bring it online. Then you need to kind of pull it through here. Others just don't. So again, as Ud said, it varies quite a bit. But the most important aspect of it is the alignment to make sure that there is one single point of truth from the user's point of view. I'm not sure if this answers the question, but I hope it does.
Another question is regarding the sustainability. And so one of the sustainability agreements established by Europe is the right to repair. And of course, that is part of the digital product passport as well. You need to have that information available. So you need to have spare parts and you need to have that information available. So how does aftermarket PIM play into that development?
Actually, Signifikant as a company is involved in European research project exactly on the reverse workflow, the reuse and refurbishment of spare parts. So we have actually a number of initiatives in that direction. One of it is that we're looking into with one of our customers, when you searching for a new component, you can also search on there are markets in Europe for used components. You can search for, okay, can I return this and what is the value? So that we create a market for researched components. Also, we allow our customers to share the information to different levels. Internally, you may want to share a lot of information. Then you have a number of information you want to share to your service organization. But then you say, okay, we are obliged, and also we understand that it's important people can repair. So you can also easily provide information to the general public. Maybe you want them to register, but then they can see the information that is needed and required from the European Union to be able to repair it by yourself. So yeah, we are involved in certain initiatives, but also our tool is actually prepared for reverse logistics and also for the usage of refurbished components.
That maybe ties into one of the questions from Chris again. It goes back to sort of how to order these products and how do you sort of record the transaction. And his question is the punch out principle used within Signifikant?
I'm sorry, I need to read which principle?
Yeah, the punch out principle. So basically you have there's an internal catalog. Maybe that is Signifikant, or maybe there's an internal system managed by the customer focused, and then you order things through that portal, but you are punching out towards the supplier web shop or the supplier aftermarket delivery service to order that product, and then the transaction comes back into the customer system again.
Yes, we have the most simple form, of course, which is just download, upload of order cards, which is the most simple one for the small resellers that would need to have a punch out, but really haven't taken the step in to be fully automated all the way. But then there are more advanced solutions to the same thing. And we've been experimenting and I've been using at a few customers the punch out principle. If you just Google it, you'll find a description of it, to the most advanced ones where we actually integrate the order process, where a dealer may access APIs and place orders. And the most important part is actually access the data itself. And that is not really the punch-out principle, but if you're a dealer and you're selling spare parts for many different OEMs, you may want to be able to not only make copies to your own website of the OEM, but rather integrate information. Then there is not really punch-out, but it's still the integration of information. So we have some levels here to support not only the punch-out principle, but rather the integration of a dealer network.
So basically, however you want to integrate from simple CSV upload of a transaction or of an order to the fully integrated long tail catalog, it is all possible. Cool. Then, of course, one more question is, how can parts be displayed with turnable views directly from the CAD system? So how can parts be displayed with turnable views directly from the CAD system? Can you show an example of this? Do we have that available in the demo, you think?
We didn't prepare it in the demo, but from the CAD, well, maybe you have, Ruud. I'm not sure.
No, not right.
But okay, we can of course arrange a separate demo for that. But having a 3D view, typically we use step format from the CAD, and then we transform it and use it in the web browser using just common web technology. WebGL is the basic foundation, but there are a few more technical words that I'm not so good at. That will make it possible for you to switch and turn, show and hide parts, zoom, explode the image or the component. If it's just a simple part, then you can also do it. But sometimes if it's a simple part, you may use image sequences instead just to be able to turn. So it depends a little bit what you want to achieve. If you just want to look at a single part from different angles, or if you actually want to have a complete structure which you could explode and show and hide parts on. We do have all of those. Yes.
Final question for now. And if you have any further questions, please let me know. Just drop them in the comment box. The final question is, it's very difficult to sometimes find the right spare part, especially if there's multiple versions of a certain product. And how can AI help you to find the right product in the first time? So first time right with replacement parts, especially because if you buy the wrong product or order the wrong replacement part, you, well, create a return. So how does AI help you get that first time right?
You want to go, Ruud, or shall I?
You can.
Okay. Actually, AI is really good to understand language, so you can ask about it. But there is a small limitation to AI, and that is it won't get better than the data which is available. So if you do know which part actually goes into a specific version, and you have a way to drill down and find which version I have in front of myself, then an AI can help you in that process. And that makes it get the first time right. But if you don't have correct data on what you actually has delivered, then an AI can't help you anyway because you just don't have the information. So I would say the data is king in this aspect. Then AI can help you using human language to find what information you have. What we have found when we have done A/B testing is that it's usually faster to use a regular search than AI search, because if you have a product and you have a number on it, you will find the right spare part in only a few clicks, and an AI won't beat you on that. But the AI can beat you in every aspect in increasing data quality, because if you look at an install base, it's going to be a lot of products, a lot of data, and a human increasing the quality of the data could be a bit hard, but an AI can help you finding the weaknesses of the data so that you can improve it. So what we found in our testing an AI is the search is not so much benefited from the AI, except that you can speak language, but the analysis of the data and the quality improvements and the ease of imports can be improved using AI. I'm not sure if that gives a good answer to the
Well, it
question, but I
helps.
hope.
So it helps get the right data in. So I think it does help in sort of reducing returns and
Yes,
getting
yes,
first time right.
yes.
But it's not what you said. It's not the search. Like the base data still has to be good enough. It's unfortunate because I just want to throw AI at the problem and have the problem magically vanish, but that is unfortunately not always the case. Yeah, so that were the questions at least for now. So if anyone has any other questions, just drop them in the chat.
Okay, Matthias, you can take back the screen.
So then I'm going to wrap up a little bit. And I hope I got the right screen here now. A little bit of strategies in the aftermarket. A few things are really, really important that you just can't get away with. And the first one is to handle all their legacy information which exists in the aftermarket, the replacements and their chains and all the things that are out on the field. And the reason for that, of course, is for the second one, that is the exact right part for the exact right version. That also goes to the AI. AI can probably help you increasing the quality, but it won't take away the need of the exact right part to the right version or product or serial number. To do a good work in the aftermarket, of course, you will need to help your service technicians or your users or your owners to find the needed information that they need to do the job, a manual or a bulletin or an instruction. Then it becomes, you need to keep some kind of track record. So if you get a lot of orders of a specific spare part, it's really interesting to know why that is. So here comes to store the connection between ordered parts and the actual serial numbers or versions or products. That will help you understand if you have quality issues. Of course, that goes along with claims management, that you want to know where did that part go, which product, which version of a specific component is causing the problems. Then the install base, of course, will be very, very helpful to the customer to know which units you have out on the field. And if you don't have the exact install base and possibly the exact versions that are out. The last piece is to work on the cross and upsell strategies, and those strategies will be aimed at helping the customer do their job, not just to sell another spare part. So the better you can service a customer in doing the job, the better it is, and that should be the cross-sales, upsells strategy. So if we want to look at our approach, we try to look at the end user, the consumer, which has some kind of problem with the machine. And they have some kind of way of identifying the thing they have in front of themselves. It could be vehicle identification number, a serial number, a product number, whatever you call it, but something that tells which version of product do I have in front of myself. And to solve the need, they would need to access the information, typically over the web, hopefully using our tools or some other tool where we provide the information. But the important part is they need to get the data which is specific to them. If they're a business consumer or also end consumer, of course, they don't know the prices, and it could be contracted prices. They want to see previous orders and so on, especially if they're a B2B. Possibly they would need to see supporting data. That could be data from the product itself by fetching IoT information from a product and getting additional supporting tools or access to tools for registering a ticket, seeing maintenance protocols, and other things that will help them do the job. So then this goes back to data is king. They won't be able to do a good job unless they have good data. And from our side, the way we think is you will have the product information, which will be the structures, the parts, the drill rounds, the documentation, the service information, and so on for all the produced models. But will also be some kind of machine register or assets register where you have the produced units or produced versions. And that one will contain the information how things were built, how they were configured, what options were put on, and if you have the processes in place, possibly it will also be how these products were maintained. Then it's important to make sure that depending on who's looking, we can, in the backend, filter out the information that is needed for the user. So if it's a service technician, they'll probably get information about service bulletins and things that are not as open. While if it's an end user, they might get a little bit less information. And on the right side, we have called the import sources. This could be a quite big thing, actually, where we try to get information from various sources to make sure that we do not have yet another silo with no connection to other places. At the end, we will need to expose this, and we will expose it through our web interface, but we could also expose this information to other systems. It could be a third-party claim system. It could be a dealer that wants to access information. It could be a QA system. All kinds of systems that need the exact information on products, versions, individuals. So that we do through exports and through APIs and all those mechanisms that typically come along when you're working with technology. So quick zoom in on the right-hand side and import and sources. And basically, when we do an implementation with the client, there will be quite many different sources of information. Here I just group them into CAD, CCMS, PLM, ERP. It could be multiple sources, but they will be providing information on the information that goes into the aftermarket PIM. And it could be that some systems provide some information, others other information on the exact same entity, let's say a part. So maybe you get the dimensions and the part number from the CAD system, then you get from the ERP system the actual name and the pricing tags, and then maybe you have a PIM system which will provide the image and the translations of the name into various languages, because the translations likely will not be in the CAD. So what we're trying to show here is that the integration side, to not create yet another silo, is really, really important. This is where you align things, and of course that's something you want to automate to as a high extent as possible. But sometimes it's not possible to automate fully, and then we have the tools to enrich and verify data in a way that it becomes good for the aftermarket. Once it's in the PIM, we can expose it through our own web or to other systems, and also the systems needed to create an integrated order flow if that is needed, which could be payment providers, ERP systems, and so on. So this is the last slide. So I would like to jump over to you, Steve, and see if there are any other questions on the last summary.
Let me check. I think no further questions yet, but if they are, please let us know. Drop them in the comments. I think we have just about 2 minutes left of the original time frame, but I think we had some very good questions, and if there are any further questions, we'll definitely reach out to you guys and put them through. So if someone from the audience has any questions, you'll be able to connect with Ruud or Matthias on LinkedIn, or just connect with me and I'll put you through. I still have many, many questions, but it is great to see a very different view of PIM than we usually see. It's a very interesting angle, and I'm really inspired by the way that it sort of takes the customer problem as the first, well, as the starting point, where you don't want to just have product data in a central repository. You want to do something with it, and it means in this case focusing on getting the right spare part to the right location, to the right customer, to the right photo. Doing that is complicated. I know from experience, and having the right tool to serve you during that whole process and during that whole journey is, I think, a welcome change from maybe the more sort of smaller oriented PIMs and smaller oriented solutions that we usually see out there. So super inspiring to see that today. Since we have no more questions, and since we are coming up for time, I want to thank you, Matthias, and thank you, Ruud, for sharing that and sharing your insights and some introduction of the tooling. I know that this was a very short introduction, and I think we can have multiple sessions to dive into different bits of the tooling, and I would love to invite you to do so. So thanks for your time. And thank you as well to the audience for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon. I hope to see you maybe in the next installment where we dive a bit deeper into Signifikant, or we have some other webinars coming up as well. So hope to see you then. I wish everyone a very good afternoon, very good evening, and see you soon on a new event. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.